Yo, what is up, guys? Del Boy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, Brian Castano defeats Patrick Teixeira by a unanimous decision to become the new WBO Super Welterweight Champion of the world. He won the fight by a unanimous decision, and, it was pretty lopsided, in all honesty. I actually did not give Patrick Teixeira a round in this fight. I felt Brian Castano basically dominated it from start to finish. He was always in the driver's seat. He was dictating the pace, fighting on his terms, and quite frankly, it's the sort of fight that I expected going into it. I said in my prediction video that I felt Brian Castano was a bad style match for Patrick Teixeira. Teixeira is a tall, rangy guy for super welterweight, but he's a guy who doesn't really utilise his height and reach. He invites pressure onto himself and he'll try and trade with you. And against somebody like Brian Castano, I always felt that was a recipe for disaster because to me, Brian Castano naturally is the best inside fighter at 154 pounds. That style against Castano I felt was always going to be a problem, and it turned out that way. The only thing I really got wrong was I thought that Brian Castano was going to stop Patrick Teixeira late on in this fight. But to Teixeira's credit, he showed a lot of heart, a good chin, good resilience, but that's really it. He never really troubled Brian Castano in this fight whatsoever, particularly in the first 8 rounds or so. In the first 8 rounds, Teixeira was trying to box behind like a weak jab, and he was sitting far too long on the ropes, and Brian Castano just found it way too easy to get on the inside, and when he was on the inside, he was outlanding Teixeira, working the body, working the head. He was cutting the ring off very well, coming in at angles and really peppering Patrick Teixeira up close and at mid-range. And yeah, Teixeira never really had any answers for what Castano was doing, especially in the first 8 rounds, like I said. Don't get me wrong, Teixeira was fighting hard, he was doing the best he could, he was showing signs of resilience, he was always trying to throw back, but, a lot of those shots that he was throwing, especially the straight shots, were caught on the gloves of Brian Castano, and the shots that did land to body and head had no effect on Castano whatsoever. So first 8 rounds, Castano completely bossed it, and in the last 4 rounds, I still felt Castano won these rounds, but Teixeira had a little more success. Teixeira actually tried to apply a bit more pressure on his own behalf, trying to utilise his size and strength, and he tried to push Castano back a few times. And when he did that, he looked better doing it than boxing. He actually had more success in terms of shots landed and whatnot, but he was still getting pieced up and outlanded himself. So yeah, Teixeira tried to switch it up in the last 4 rounds, to his credit, but it didn't really work all that effectively. He was a little better, had a bit more success, but still, in my opinion, not enough to win the rounds. Probably should have really tried to be aggressive earlier on in this fight, to be honest, because he had no hope in outboxing Castano, and he wasn't showing any signs that he could walk him onto a big shot and knock him out. So, yeah, maybe Teixeira should have actually applied pressure earlier on in this fight. But, regardless, I just think he fought a better fighter in there, in Castano. Castano, great amateur background, fought in the World Series of Boxing, and all around he's just a better fighter. Castano showed some great feat in this fight, getting to the inside, cutting the ring off, like I said, attacking at angles, some very good head position on the inside, a nice high guard coming in, showed good signs of defence as well. I thought Castano fought a real good fight in this one. The only negative really is that he didn't get the stoppage. That's the only negative in my mind. But apart from that, I thought he boxed really well, applied good pressure, showed a good work rate, never got hurt. He actually did a really good job in there. And also in round 12, Castano actually hurt Teixeira with a headshot. But, in round 12, it was too late for Castano to force for stoppage. If he got that a couple of rounds earlier, I think he would have forced for stoppage, in all honesty, because once Teixeira got hurt in the 12th, he was basically done, and he wanted to see that final bell. But yeah, Brian Castano, the new WBO Super Welterweight Champion, and I felt he performed really well in there, to be honest, and he's a threat at 154. The fight that makes sense, as we know, is Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castano. Both guys are PBC, and that fight would be for undisputed at super welterweight. That would be a great fight. I would lean towards Jermell Charlo, but Brian Castano is a real hard fight for him. Jermell Charlo's not a great inside fighter in my opinion. He's most dangerous at mid-range. if Brian Castano gets on the inside against Jamel Charlo, Jamel could be outworked. But Jamel Charlo poses much more of a threat as Castano's coming in, trying to close the distance with his power. So it's a real interesting fight, that one. Real interesting. The more I think about it, I'm actually quite unsure on it. I would lean towards Charlo, but I think that's a real hard fight to predict. And hopefully we get that this year. There's no reason why those two guys don't fight next. You know, the PBC need to make that fight. It would be great for boxing, great for the division, and stylistically as well, Castano versus Charlo would be a very good fight, in my opinion. So yeah, good performance by Brian Castano, good heart showed by Patrick Teixeira, and yeah, part of a really good card by Golden Boy. The main event as well between Jojo Diaz and Shavkat Rakhimov was also a good fight. And yeah, all in all, a good day of boxing yesterday. Warrington versus Lara, Rakhimov versus Diaz, and obviously Patrick Teixeira versus Brian Castano. Some real good fights this weekend, and I enjoyed it. So yeah, share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Del Boy. Peace.